Welcome to Whispers, Secrets, and Wounds. If you enjoy the content, please subscribe to the channel. Like this video, it really helps the channel grow. Share it with someone who might enjoy it too. Comment your location. We'd love to know where you're watching from. Lena gave Mark an enigmatic smile as the soft candlelight danced across the dinner table. Gentle music played in the background, setting the tone for a romantic night between longtime lovers. Even after 10 years of marriage, their eyes still sparkled with affection. Yet beneath the calm atmosphere, something felt different, a slight tension, an unspoken anticipation. "Mark, there's something I've been thinking about," Lena said, her voice calm but deliberate, as if she were carefully weighing her words. Mark looked up, intrigued. He knew his wife well and could tell that when she spoke in that tone, something meaningful was about to be said. Perhaps she wanted to talk about a vacation, a career shift, or even that home renovation he kept delaying. But what she said next caught him completely off guard. "I want to try something different, something to break us out of our routine. You know how much I love you, and our relationship is great, but it feels like we're stuck in place." She paused, observing Mark's expression, which remained locked on her, curious. "I've been thinking about going to a swinger club." Mark froze for a moment, struggling to take in what he'd just heard. A wave of emotions and thoughts surged through him. He never would have guessed that Lena, usually so calm and reserved, would bring up something so daring. What had inspired her to bring this up? He was at a loss for words, and an awkward silence settled between them. Sensing his confusion, Lena gently reached for his hand. "I'm not saying we have to do anything right away. Just consider it. I felt like I needed to be honest about what's been on my mind." She paused again, trying to phrase it right. "It's not because something is lacking between us, but more about exploring together, finding new parts of ourselves." Mark's initial discomfort began to give way to cautious curiosity. He knew their marriage was solid, that the love they felt for each other was deep and true. But at the same time, he felt the monotony slowly creeping into their lives. What Lena was proposing was undoubtedly bold, but he didn't want to dismiss the idea outright without first reflecting on what it really meant. "Why didn't you talk about this before?" he asked, still a little stunned. Lena gave a slight smile, a mix of shyness and courage. "Because I didn't know how you would react. But I thought a lot about it and realized that the only way for us to keep growing together is to be completely honest with each other, without fear of judgment." Mark took a deep breath. He felt that this was an opportunity to strengthen their connection even more, even if it meant stepping out of his comfort zone. It wasn't just about Lena's desire, but about her courage to share something so intimate. He knew this required immense mutual respect and trust. "I need some time to digest all this, Lena. It's not something you decide overnight. But I'm willing to talk, to understand what this means to you and maybe for us." She nodded, visible relief in her eyes. "That's all I'm asking, Mark, that we can talk about it without hurry, without pressure." They continued dinner, the conversation flowing to other topics, but that moment changed something between them. The seed of a new understanding had been planted. And although Mark was still in shock, he felt strangely excited by the prospect of exploring that unknown side with the woman he loved. There was an unspoken promise that, regardless of what they decided, they would face it together, as they always had. And that, in itself, was already a first step. In the days following Lena's revelation, Mark found himself thinking more and more about her proposal. The idea provoked him and, at the same time, made him apprehensive. He began to realize how much her desire challenged not just their marriage but also his own perceptions of love, trust, and intimacy. It was as if the mere mention of the swingers club had lifted a veil that had covered hidden aspects of their relationship. One morning while having coffee, Mark couldn't help but let his mind wander back to that night's conversation. Lena's words echoed like a restless refrain. He picked up his phone and hesitantly began researching the topic. Every article he read, every testimonial, seemed to open new questions. The experiences of other couples were diverse, full of nuances he could never have imagined. There were stories of overcoming, of couples who rediscovered passion, but also accounts of disappointment and regret. He realized that this world was much more complex than he had initially thought. When Lena came home that night, she found Mark sitting on the couch with an expression that mixed curiosity and concern. He was visibly absorbed in thought but straightened up when he saw her. Lena immediately sensed that the conversation she had been waiting for was finally going to happen. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and I've also been researching some things," Mark began without beating around the bush. Lena sat next to him with a mix of expectation and apprehension. "And what did you find?" she asked, trying to remain calm. Mark took a deep breath, trying to organize his thoughts before speaking. "I read about other couples' experiences, and I think I'm starting to understand better what you want. But at the same time, I can't help but feel a certain fear of what this could mean for us, for our relationship." Lena watched him in silence, absorbing every word. She knew that what she had proposed was not easy to digest. "It's not about pressuring you, Mark. I just wanted to be honest about what I'm feeling. Maybe we can explore this together, but only as far as we both feel comfortable." He nodded, thinking about the depth of that proposal. It wasn't just about going or not going to a swinger club, but about being willing to face together the insecurities that might arise. "I know, Lena. It's just that this makes me question. Are we looking for something outside because something is missing here?" He pointed to the space between them, as if the emptiness were tangible. Lena reached out and gently touched his cheek. "Nothing is missing, Mark. Love you. I've always loved you and always will. It's just that sometimes I feel like we're so used to each other that we forget to surprise ourselves, to challenge ourselves. I don't want to lose that." Her words resonated deeply. It was true, they loved each other deeply, but perhaps they had let passion settle into a comfort zone. Mark felt a tightness in his chest. The prospect of trying something so out of the ordinary was frightening, but it also carried the promise of something new and possibly transformative. After a long pause, he sighed. "Okay, let's do this. Let's keep talking about it. No rush, no pressure, but with the certainty that no matter what happens, our love and respect come before anything else." Lena smiled, visibly relieved. "That's all I wanted to hear. Let's build this experience together, at our own pace." Mark felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The conversation had been difficult, but at the same time, he felt they were more connected than ever. They hugged there on the couch, feeling each other's breath, and for the first time in a long time, Mark felt there was a new energy, a new flame burning between them. It was as if they had opened a door to a new chapter, and the mere willingness to explore it together was in itself a huge step forward. The night arrived, and the moment had finally come. Mark and Lena were in the car, parked in front of the swinger club. The place was nothing like Mark expected. No flashy neon lights or loud music echoing through the walls. On the contrary, it was a discreet house with an elegant and understated facade, almost indistinguishable from the others around. There was a touch of sophistication about the place, as if only those who truly knew the paths to that alternate universe could find the entrance. Mark took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions overwhelming him. He looked at Lena beside him, and she returned the gaze with a reassuring smile. There was a complicity between them, a sort of silent pact that whatever the experience inside, they would face it together. No rush, no pressure. Lena's hand gently rested on his, as if to convey strength and serenity. "If at any point you don't feel comfortable, we'll leave. No arguments, no embarrassment," she said in a calm but firm voice. Mark knew she was being sincere, and somehow that reassured him. They entered hand in hand. The entrance hall was welcoming, decorated with dark wood furniture and soft lighting. Nothing there seemed threatening or vulgar. On the contrary, the atmosphere was inviting, almost intimate. A couple greeted them with friendly smiles, politely explaining the rules and areas of the house. It was an ethical code that emphasized respect and consent above all else. Everyone there had the right to say yes or no at any time, without judgment, without pressure. As they walked through the corridors, exploring the different environments, Mark and Lena encountered scenes of affection, conversations, and laughter. There was nothing obscene or vulgar, as he had imagined in his moments of greatest hesitation. The people there were comfortable, open, each at their own pace. He felt like a tourist in a new country, where everything was different but at the same time surprisingly familiar. He realized that the biggest barrier to overcome was not the proposal itself but his own preconceived ideas. They arrived at a lounge decorated with velvet sofas and silk curtains. The sound of soft music filled the air, creating an atmosphere of tranquility. Lena picked up 2 glasses of wine and handed one to Mark. "Here's to the new," she said with a genuine smile. He couldn't help but smile back, taking a sip and feeling the warmth of the wine relax his nerves. For a moment, they just observed the surroundings, talking about trivialities, letting the place unfold slowly. Suddenly, a couple approached. They were friendly, with smiles that didn't hide a playful curiosity. "Is this your first time?" the woman asked in a light tone. Lena nodded without hesitation. "Yes, we're just getting to know it, without expectations." Mark was surprised at Lena's naturalness. She seemed at ease, as if it were just another social event. The couple invited them to sit, and soon the 4 were engaged in a casual conversation about the city, the best restaurants, and even travel tips. Mark found himself laughing, relaxing. The atmosphere was indeed welcoming. It felt more like a gathering of friends than anything else. But at the same time, there was an underlying tension, an air of possibility in the air. It was like standing at a crossroads between the familiar and the unknown, where every choice, every gesture, carried the potential to reveal something new. Mark felt Lena's hand squeeze his lightly. She looked at him with a sparkle in her eye, as if silently asking if he was okay. He smiled back, and for the first time that night, he realized he might be more comfortable than he thought. Not because he was in a different place, but because he was there with her, sharing something intimate, something that, regardless of the outcome, had already brought them closer in an unexpected way. Time seemed to have a different rhythm inside that house. Every second carried its own weight, as if it was about to turn into an unforgettable moment. Mark realized it wasn't just about the environment or the people, but about the internal journey he and Lena were on. Each step there was a deeper dive into the trust and complicity they had built over the years. He felt that perhaps the real challenge wasn't the place itself but the ability to surrender to the moment, to lower their defenses and explore together. Not just that space, but the very essence of what it meant to be in a relationship. As the night progressed, Mark and Lena explored the different areas of the house. In a larger room, a group of people danced to the sound of soft music. The lights were low, creating an atmosphere of intimacy and mystery. Mark observed around, feeling a mix of curiosity and nervousness. He was still getting used to the idea of being there, trying to adjust to a context so far from his daily life. Lena, on the other hand, seemed relaxed, as if she were experiencing a new taste of freedom. She laughed more easily, moved with a lightness that Mark hadn't seen in a long time. They exchanged a look, and for a moment, he wondered if she was having more fun than he could comprehend. The thought bothered him, but he tried to push it away. He didn't want to let insecurity ruin the moment. The couple they had met earlier approached them again, inviting them to a game that, according to them, was a relaxed way to meet other people. Lena accepted readily, and Mark, though hesitant, agreed to join. They all sat in a circle while one of the participants explained the rules. The game consisted of questions and answers, a sort of truth or dare, but with a touch of provocation and spontaneity that seemed to fit perfectly with the atmosphere of the place. The first questions were simple, almost innocent. They asked Mark and Lena how they met, about their favorite trips, those kinds of things. But as the game progressed, the questions began to take on a more personal tone. "What's the biggest desire you've never told your partner?" someone asked Lena. She hesitated for a moment, looking at Mark. He noticed a different sparkle in her eyes, something that mixed nervousness and excitement. "I always wanted to know what it would be like to see you being desired by someone else," she replied, her voice a little shaky but firm. Mark felt his heart race. That confession caught him by surprise. It wasn't just the idea itself, but what it represented. There was a desire for exploration, to discover new facets of each other. He didn't know what to say. Part of him was intrigued, but another, more primitive part felt challenged and vulnerable. "I don't know how I would react to that," he replied honestly, looking into her eyes. Lena nodded, as if expecting that answer. "Neither do I know how I would react. But I think that, more than the act itself, what intrigues me is what we would discover about ourselves, about how we handle our limits, our jealousy." The conversation around the circle continued, but Mark and Lena were immersed in their own thoughts. For Mark, the idea of seeing Lena being desired by someone else was as fascinating as it was disturbing. He wondered how far he was willing to go, and if he was really prepared to explore the limits of his own desire and possessiveness. The game ended, and people began to disperse, some to dance, others to the sofas around the room. Lena and Mark moved to a more private corner where they could talk without being interrupted. "What you said," Mark began, but Lena interrupted him, placing a finger on his lips. "Mark, I just wanted to be honest about my feelings. I don't want to pressure you into anything. What we're doing here is discovering how far we can go together, without fear, without judgment." He took a deep breath, trying to process everything. It was true. They were there to explore, to get to know each other in ways they might never have imagined. But at the same time, he felt they were approaching an invisible boundary, something they hadn't discussed in detail. "What if we cross a line we can't come back from?" he asked with a sincerity that almost scared him. Lena looked at him deeply, her eyes reflecting a mix of love and challenge. "The only line we can't cross is that of disrespect. If we're always open and communicate our limits, we'll be safe. We're here because we love and trust each other. Nothing else matters." Her words touched him. Mark realized that was the true test. Trust. The ability to open up and be vulnerable without fear of judgment. It was a test of love, showing that they were willing to face their fears together, no matter how uncomfortable it was. He smiled at her, feeling the weight of the moment dissolve into something lighter, more intimate. "Then let's do this. Let's find out how far we can go together." Lena returned the smile, and they kissed, a kiss full of promises and uncertainties. The night was still full of possibilities, and no matter how unfamiliar the territory, they knew that in the end, what really mattered was what they felt for each other. The morning after visiting the swingers club, Mark and Lena woke up side by side, still enveloped in the comfortable silence of the room. The sun softly streamed through the curtains, casting faint shadows on the floor. Mark turned to Lena and watched her for a moment. She looked peaceful, a slight smile on her lips, her hair spread across the pillow as if everything was exactly where it should be. The night before had been a dive into uncharted territory. They hadn't crossed any boundaries they weren't ready to face. They had just observed, talked, and connected in ways that had seemed impossible before. However, Mark felt there were more questions than answers forming in his mind. Lena opened her eyes and met Mark's gaze. There was no need for words at that moment, but he felt he needed to speak. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly, his voice still rough from sleep. She took a deep breath before answering. "I'm fine. Better than I thought I'd be, actually." A shy smile appeared, and she reached out to touch his face. It was strange but at the same time liberating. "And you?" Mark hesitated for a moment, trying to organize his thoughts. "I feel different. I think seeing you there, so confident, so at peace with what we were doing, made me realize there's so much about us that we still don't know. And that's scary but also exciting." He paused, searching for the right words. "I don't know if I want to go further, but I'm glad we did this, that we allowed ourselves to discover something new." Lena nodded. "I understand. I don't know if I want to explore more either, but just having experienced this together, I feel it has brought us closer in a way I didn't even know we needed." They spent the morning talking about everything they had seen and felt, the scenes they witnessed, the people they met. Every detail was dissected, not as an experience requiring validation or judgment, but as a new and intriguing field they had explored together. There was no embarrassment, just a genuine desire to share. As the day went on, the intimacy between them transformed into something palpable. The trust and complicity they had built over the years now seemed deeper, more real. There was a lightness in their interactions that had been absent before, as if they had shed a weight they hadn't known they were carrying. Later, as they prepared dinner, Lena approached Mark with a serious expression. "I've been thinking," she began, hesitant. Mark stopped chopping vegetables and looked at her, curious. "About what?" "About where we go from here. About us. I feel like, more than trying something new, what really brought me here was the desire to reconnect with you, to rediscover ourselves. But at the same time, I'm afraid that this will turn into a need to always seek something new. As if what we have will never be enough." Mark felt the weight of her words. It was a legitimate concern. After all, what started as a desire to spice up the relationship could easily turn into a constant search for more, for something they might never find outside themselves. He approached and held her hands, feeling the softness of her skin. "I've thought about that too. And I think that maybe the answer isn't in looking for something outside, but in understanding what this meant for us inside." He brought her hand to his chest, feeling his heart beating under her palm. "If this made us look at each other differently, then it was already worth it. We don't need to go further, Lena. We just need to keep choosing each other every day, the way we are." She smiled, her eyes brimming with emotion. "You're right. It's not about the place or the people, but about how it made us realize that, despite everything, there's still so much to explore in each other. So many layers to discover." Dinner became a silent celebration of this new phase. They talked about their dreams, their insecurities, and expectations, opening doors that had remained closed for a long time. And that night, when they lay down side by side again, they felt more connected than ever. It wasn't about the swingers club or what they might or might not do. It was about the courage to be vulnerable with each other, to allow themselves to explore, not just their bodies but their souls. And at that moment, they understood that true intimacy wasn't in what they did but in what they shared, in what they felt for each other. The days following that conversation were marked by a new dynamic between Lena and Mark. The shared experience at the swingers club had awakened something in them, a kind of urgency to reconnect in ways that went beyond the physical. They began to look at each other differently, as if they had suddenly rediscovered the charm of the early years of dating. One night while drinking wine on their porch, Mark broke the silence with an unexpected confession. "Do you remember what you said at the club, about seeing someone else desire me?" Lena nodded, unsure where that conversation would lead them. "I thought a lot about it, and I realized that, more than jealousy, what I felt was fear. Fear that this meant we weren't enough for each other." Lena watched him closely. "Mark, you know that has nothing to do with us not being enough, right? It's about discovering new parts of ourselves, together." He sighed, as if trying to relieve a weight from his chest. "I know. But it took time to understand that. The truth is that in that moment I felt exposed, like I was on a stage, and everyone could see my insecurities." Mark paused, looking out to the horizon, searching for words. "But now, looking back, I see that this vulnerability was what brought us closer." Lena moved closer, cupping his face in her hands. "It was. And I fell even more in love with you in that moment, for your courage to open up, to show your vulnerabilities. It made me see that we don't need anything beyond ourselves to keep this flame alive." That night, as they talked and laughed as they hadn't done in a long time, Mark had an idea. "You know what I think would be amazing? The two of us getting in the car and traveling, with no destination, no plans, no reservations. Just us, the road, and the unknown." Lena looked at him in surprise, but soon a smile of excitement appeared on her lips. "That sounds perfect. Let's leave everything behind for a while, rediscover who we are, away from routines and expectations." 2 days later, there they were, winding through roads with no maps or set directions. They stopped in small towns, talked to strangers, got lost, and found each other in every landscape, every new experience. There was no rush, just the desire to explore not only the world around them but each other. One afternoon while walking through a lavender field, Lena stopped and turned to Mark. "I've never felt so free, so complete. You brought back something I didn't even know I had lost. The sparkle, the curiosity about the world and about us." Mark smiled, and there, between the scent of the flowers and the open sky, he pulled her in for a slow kiss full of silent promises. "I think deep down we just needed to remember that love isn't a safe place. It's a constant rediscovery, a constant challenge to ourselves." They held each other for a long time, absorbing the beauty of the moment. Every smile, every touch seemed to carry the weight of a past that was now becoming a solid foundation for the future they were building. And as the sun began to set, casting a soft golden hue over them, Mark whispered something that made Lena's heart race. "I want us to know every day that we can choose to love each other, to reinvent ourselves without fear, that we don't need anything beyond this moment. I want this trip to be the beginning of something even more beautiful for us." Lena felt her eyes well up. "I want that too, Mark. I want us to continue being a mystery we choose to unravel together, every day." That night, around an improvised campfire, they toasted to love, to courage, and to everything yet to come. And for the first time in a long time, they felt that the future, with all its uncertainties and possibilities, was not something to be feared but to be celebrated. Thank you for being a part of this story with me. If it moved you, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to Whispers, Secrets and Wounds Stories. We noticed many of you who enjoy these stories aren't subscribed yet. By subscribing, you're not just following a channel, you're becoming part of a community that values deep, meaningful storytelling. Let's continue exploring these heartfelt journeys together. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you won't miss our next story.